Good evening for Telesur. I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. This is From the South, and we begin with tonight's headlines. A bribery scandal is gripping Guatemala as the former vice president there faces trial and President Otto Perez Molina refuses calls to step down. Plus, the Venezuelan government continues its security operations on the Colombian border in efforts to put an end to paramilitary activity and the smuggling of goods. Finally, the Chinese stock market crashes dramatically the day dubbed Black Monday. Fresh fears over the health of the global economy. And good evening once again. We begin this evening in Guatemala, where President Otto Perez Molina says he will not resign despite ongoing calls for his impeachment. Now, former Guatemalan Vice President Roxana Valdetti was arrested on Friday over the massive graft scandal believed to be headed by Perez Molina, known as La Línea. In a combative pre-recorded address televised to the nation, Perez Molina said he had received no money from the customs racket, to which investigators have linked him, and stressed that his conscience was clear. Now, a judge visited Perez Molina on Sunday at the presidential residence to check on his safety and location, since he had not been seen in public for over 48 hours, and some believed he might have even fled the country.
I declare categorically that I reject any link to the scandal of having received money from the defrauding operation. My conscience in that sense is at peace. I will show my face to the nation's institutions and through the necessary process mandated by law that I have not been a part of, even less beneficiary of those ill-gotten funds that go against the Guatemalan people.
7 members of President Perez Molina's cabinet have resigned so far over the corruption scandal. Now, the most recent have been the agriculture and health ministers, who quit on Sunday. This follows the resignation of 2 others on Saturday, who said they could no longer serve in Perez Molina's government.
I declare categorically that I reject any link to the scandal of having received money from the defrauding operation. My conscience in that sense is at peace. I will show my face to the nation's institutions and through the necessary process mandated by law that I have not been a part of, even less beneficiary of those ill-gotten funds that go against the Guatemalan people.
Obviously, we had the same clip there twice. And we're now going to turn to our Central American correspondent, Gerardo Torres, for the latest out of Guatemala.
Last night, the Guatemalan President Otto Perez Molina declared in a national press conference that he won't resign, even though the accusations against him of his possible participation in a corruption case known as La Línea, in which public officials of his government deviated funds from the country's National Customs Service to their private accounts. The General Prosecutor's Office and the Anti-Impunity International Commission have declared that they have proof in which Otto Perez is related as the head of this corruption scandal. Many ministers of his cabinet have been resigning in the last days, and the citizen movement that has been demanding his resignation for more than 3 months has assured that from beginning Wednesday, the pressure actions in the Guatemalan capital will increase. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Moving on now in Venezuela, the government of President Nicolas Maduro is continuing with its security operations on the border with Colombia in efforts to put an end to paramilitary activity and the smuggling of goods. Now, the border crossing in the western Venezuelan state of Táchira has been closed indefinitely as both Venezuelan and Colombian officials look for ways to combat illegal activity. A meeting between Venezuelan Foreign Minister Delcy Rodriguez and her Colombian counterpart Maria Holguín is set to take place this Wednesday. Now, so far, 10 paramilitaries have been arrested and more than 1,000 undocumented Colombians have been handed over to authorities.
Tenemos hasta el momento 1,012 personas que hemos sido entregadas al Consulado General de Colombia.
At this time, we have 1,012 people who have been handed over to the Colombian consulate. Colombia's collaboration has been extraordinary. We have done all that is required at this time with respect to registration and with humanitarian treatment. The people are being attended to very well. We are making an effort to cover all of their necessities so that they can return to our beloved neighbor Colombia, so that they can continue with their lives there.
And the governor of the border state also says that paramilitaries operating in the region have affected the economy.
Tenemos hasta el momento 10
Up until now, we have 10 people detained accused of paramilitary activity, and there are other arrests that are being sought by Colombia and Venezuela. We have people with double identities and false Venezuelan identities. All are being processed. The businesses in the border area have been closed because the paramilitaries are threatening them, saying they will kidnap them if they open, or they will charge them higher bribes. We want our sister republic, Colombia, to help us with this.
And as part of the stepped-up security, over 1,000 Colombians have been deported. Authorities say that those deported either had links to paramilitary activity or were in the country illegally. Colombia's Interior Minister has expressed the government's total support in fighting paramilitary activity as well as fighting against contraband.
The Colombian government is fully committed to cooperation with Venezuela in the fight against contraband. This fight also benefits the Colombian government as much as that of Venezuela, and we will continue with it.
And we're going to take a look now at some of the facts about smuggling in Venezuela and the economic problems that problem has caused, including some of the shortages we've been hearing so much about in the international press. Now, it's estimated that a full 40% of products in the country here in Venezuela are smuggled to Colombia. Now, many of those products are subsidized in Venezuela to ensure that the population has access to basic commodities at affordable prices. Now, once the products are smuggled to Colombia, the smugglers can earn up to 3,000% profit. In the year 2014, the Venezuelan government seized more than 28,000 tons of food and contraband. Also in 2014, more than 12 million liters of gasoline and oil products were seized that were destined for Colombia. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia admitted to the killing of a rural community leader in Colombia earlier this month. FARC leader Pablo Catatumbo read from a statement during peace talks with the Colombian government in Havana, where he condemned the murder as abhorrent. Now, the FARC and the Colombian government have been engaged in peace talks in Cuba for close to 3 years now in an attempt to end Latin America's longest-running war.
Such abhorrent acts cannot be repeated by FARC units. We promise to punish this act and take the corresponding regulations and measures to avoid a repetition.
In Argentina now, Senegalese immigrants living in Buenos Aires have denounced persecution by the city's police force. The immigrants have been subject to frequent raids and police abuses. With the latest now, here's our correspondent Laureano Ponce.
In a meeting held in the Buenos Aires city legislators, Senegalese immigrants said that they have been victims of discriminatory treatment by the city's metropolitan police. Representatives of the community of the African nation were received by local legislators who agreed to demand the city government, led by the right-wing Pro Party, to put an end to racist conduct by the local police.
We have decided to request a hearing with the head of the Metropolitan Police and the city's Attorney General to hear their opinion about this matter and to let them know that we are possibly involved in the racist actions that deserve our total rejection.
Many members of the Senegalese community make a living as street sellers in Buenos Aires. They have said that despite having all proper documentation and paying the corresponding taxes for their activities, they have become a target for what they understand is a form of institutionalized racism by police officers and the city's judiciary.
They
break into our houses with a search warrant that they don't want to register what they seize. So these procedures can never be a real register of these cases and the goods and the cash they seized.
Officials of the National Human Rights Secretariat attended the meeting and expressed their commitment to fight any form of discrimination against Senegalese workers.
We believe all those who inhabit our national territory have the same rights, and here we see a systematic, repeated and racist violation of the rights of the Siamese immigrants.
Local lawmakers started working out a special document to be presented before the city's legislature in order to monitor the actions of the Buenos Aires City Police and to end any kind of racist behavior. Laureano Ponce, Telesur, Buenos Aires.
And when we come back after the break, the Islamic State group strikes again, destroying some ancient ruins. We have a special report coming up.
Discover Latin America and the world in our programs. Telesur Reports, The Real USA, the stories behind the tweets. Ataman, Lives, Know Your Body, Open Files. Exposing the conflicts that affect our people. Compelling personal stories and the most controversial events. See it all on telesurtv.net in English. Telesur. Wherever the news, you'll be there. An insight into Africa today. With Bill Fletcher. The Global African, only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there. The truth behind the power. We lift the lid on some of the world's most ruthless figures. Open file, only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
And we start tonight's world news in Greece. That's where Panagiotis Lafasanis, the leader of the newly formed Popular Unity Party, won a presidential mandate to try to form a new government. Now, Popular Unity Party was founded only on Friday and has 3 days now to pull together a coalition after the main conservative opposition failed to do so. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, who resigned last week after Lafazanis led a rebellion in his Syriza party, has accused the opposition of deliberately delaying an election that he says is essential to ensure Greek political stability. And meanwhile, former Greek finance minister Yanis Varoufakis says he is in France now to discuss ways to revitalize European democracy. Now, he said the forcing of the Syriza government to capitulate was a major defeat for European democracy, but that he was determined to revive it.
The monetary union, trying to precede the political union, is a major error that has a lot of human cost. So given that we have the monetary union now, for better or for worse, that what matters is that we fix it and we make it work by adding to it the institutional changes which are necessary to stabilize what is a grossly unstable Europe.
Spain's anti-austerity Podemos party salutes and supports, as they put it, the possible change of course inside the British Labour Party, with the left-wing Jeremy Corbyn the favorite to be the next Labour leader. Now, Podemos leader Pablo Iglesias said it would be a full turnaround and signals the winds of change in Europe.
The fact that at this moment Jeremy Corbyn is the favorite to win the internal elections in the Labour Party, and that he can make a turn of 180 degrees to the course imposed by Tony Blair, which shows how much things are changing in Europe and how much change is possible. We salute and support a possible change in the Labour Party, and we think that it has much to do with what is happening in the world of Europe.
And moving on now, Islamic State militants blew up the ancient temple of Baal Shamin in the UNESCO-listed Syrian city of Palmyra. Now it's the latest in a series of cultural relics to be destroyed by the jihadist group. Now, famed for well-preserved Greco-Roman ruins, Palmyra was seized from government forces in May. Until Sunday, most of Palmyra's most famous sites had been left intact, but now fears are high the group will destroy the entire city.
As long as the city stands under those, we will see these painful scenes in the upcoming days and weeks, and I am sure of this. It is very important that the city is freed no matter how, whether through an international or national plan. As long as the city remains under the control of those, we will lose an important city in the history of Syria.
And for more now on the destruction of one of Syria's most important ancient sites, we turn to our correspondent Hazem Abdullah.
The IS extremists blow up the Baal Shmi temple in the ancient city of Palmyra in central Syria. This temple is one of the most important archaeological treasures registered in the World Heritage List. This act comes less than a week after the terrorists killed the city's head of antiques, Khalid al-Assad, whom they accused of loyalty to the Syrian regime.
This barbaric, systematic destruction of every cultural monument and the deliberate killing of thinkers and researchers seem to be a clear attempt to destroy all that is civilized in our barbaric message against Syria, which is the oldest civilization in the region.
I want the whole world to know that we are going to defeat terrorism. This terrorism that is trying to undermine Syria and the whole of life. This brutal crime could not have been done without the support of the Arab International and the regional parties involved in the shedding of Syrian blood and the demolition of the civilization.
The Syrian Director General of Antiques and Museum, Dr. Ma'moun Abdel Karim, has confirmed that the extremists of ISIS booby-trapped a large amount of explosives of the Temple of Baal Shmin, which was destroyed on a large part. He added that the terrorists have booby-trapped all the monuments in the city of Palmyra and are ready to destroy them.
What happened is an attack to civilization, targeting the light that illuminates human trails. These terrorists do not see the monuments as a product of artistic and historical respect to humanity as a whole. Their brutal way of thinking belongs to the Middle Ages, but their barbaric thoughts will not deter our attempts to protect our heritage and our culture.
The killing of al-Assad and the destruction of the temple sparked international reactions, while the UNESCO considered the latter as a war crime. Hazem Abdullah, Telesur, Syria.
1 in 5 adults in the United States experiences a mental health issue. Hundreds of patients and their family members gathered in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. to bring awareness to an issue that affects a large portion of the population. Bianca Perez now with this report.
Mario Lopez has struggled since a very young age with bipolar disorder, which put him on a downward spiral, something that many people who live with mental illnesses face.
I had used substances, a lot during that time too. Heroin was my drug of choice, and I was addicted to heroin, and that really controlled my life. And I ended up in prison, stayed in prison for a couple of years, and all that. It's things that people with mental health conditions often go through.
Tell me what dignity looks like.
Like Mario, 19 million Americans live with mental illnesses and often do not find the help that they need to be able to lead normal lives. Many of the citizens who are able to overcome their illnesses find themselves wanting to help others who are struggling.
For me, the person who made the biggest difference in my recovery was another person who had used heroin like myself. And so that person was able to reach out to me, was able to really connect with me. And so now I work at an agency where I'm able to reach out to people and connect with them on that same level.
What do we want? Dignity! A march was held in Washington, D.C. demanding dignity and raising awareness for people with mental health illness. Citizens who suffer from a mental health issue are 5 times more likely to be unemployed than their non-disabled counterparts.
Occasionally people do face discrimination. It's unconscionable that anyone should be discriminated against. Again, it's coming from this place of not understanding and not knowing and fear. So we need to overcome that.
People with mental health Due to a negative stigma associated with mental illness, many patients do not seek treatment in order to avoid being associated with an illness. On average, adults in the U.S. who suffer from a serious mental illness die 25 years earlier than other citizens. Bianca Perez, Telesur, Washington, D.C.
Over 2,000 people sung along at the 80s-inspired punk concert in Estonia over the weekend. Now singers dressed up in colorful punk-style wigs and alternative clothing for the event titled Touched by Brain. Now we're clearly seeing the wrong video here, but I'll continue to tell you about this story. Now this concert we are telling you about encourages people to think on their own and in accordance with their beliefs. The punk style used by the participants represents the energy of an era of liberation and anarchy. The concert happens every 4 years.
This is a very, very difficult phase for the Chinese economy, not because of what's going on elsewhere in the world, but the rebalancing of the economy that they're trying to make away from a industrial manufacturing economy to one which is more consumer driven. They're doing exactly what every Western economy has done, but at a much faster pace.
Once again, our video and what I'm saying was off there, but we're going to move on. We go to now the other stories that we're following around the world.
US stocks tumbled in opening trade, with the Dow plummeting more than 900 points as a global equity slump worsened following the big drop in Chinese stocks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average traded more than 600 points lower after falling as much as 1,089 points, its biggest intraday swing in history. A blast ripped through a warehouse at a US military post near Tokyo, sending sparks